Welcome to this episode of the Aquarist Edge, a podcast for home aquarists just like you. Learn more about how to keep a thriving aquarium and discover ideas and tips to give your aquarium the edge. And now, over to our host, Arthur Preston.
You've seen these fish. You've probably been attracted to their tank as you walk into a fish shop and see a tank full of brightly coloured fish swimming excitedly backwards and forwards. On closer inspection, you'll see that they are labelled GloFish and seem to have an iridescent glow, an artificial fluorescent glow that seems alluring and certainly attractive. For some people, they're a gateway into the hobby. They're irresistible, they're exciting, they're full of personality. But to others, they represent a controversial line that should never have been crossed. But wherever you stand on this topic, there's no denying that GloFish have carved a permanent spot in the freshwater aquarium world. In this episode, I'm going to take us through everything we need to know about these glowing beauties. And when I say everything, I mean what exactly GloFish are and how they were created, the science behind their glow, the ethics and the controversy around them, and some legal and breeding questions that you've probably heard about. And perhaps to finish off, whether or not GloFish are in fact right for your aquarium or for you. So go grab your cup of coffee, let's settle in and enjoy some time learning about GloFish. And let's start by getting one thing straight. GloFish are not a natural species. They aren't caught in the wild and they don't exist in any natural habitat. They are a registered trademark and a patented brand of genetically modified aquarium fish. They were originally launched in the US market in 2003 by a company called Yorktown Technologies. The brand has since grown under the stewardship of Spectrum Brands, which now markets and distributes them globally. The very first GloFish was a genetically modified zebra danio, a fish species already very well known in the aquarium trade and widely used in biological research. Scientists had inserted a gene for green fluorescent protein from a particular jellyfish into the fish's genome, and this gene caused the fish to glow green under ultraviolet or blue light. Now, why was this done? Well, it was for a very practical and perhaps even a noble purpose. It was to detect water pollution in real time. These fish would fluoresce more brightly in the presence of certain toxins. And this modification to these fish was never intended for the aquarium trade. But once researchers saw the vivid and visually appealing glow, the commercial potential became obvious. And after further development, the GloFish line was born, and in 2003, the first fluorescent fish legally available to consumers in the US was released to market. Since then, GloFish have expanded into several other species, each with a variety of color variants. These include zebra danios, black-skirt tetras, tiger barbs, rainbow sharks, and bettas. I've also seen angels as GloFish and corridors. They come in dazzling trademarked hues: electric green, starfire red, cosmic blue, galactic purple, sunburst orange, and moonrise pink. It's important to know that these colors aren't painted or dyed. They are biologically encoded, and this simply means the fish produce fluorescent proteins within their cells. These proteins absorb light in the ultraviolet or blue spectrum and re-emit it as visible light, and this causes that glowing effect under certain lights. This is perhaps a good moment to talk about painted fish. This is a cruel practice that is still sadly found in some parts of the world. This is not the same as a GloFish. Painted or dyed fish, like certain parrot cichlids or glassfish, are injected with synthetic dyes. This process causes trauma to the fish. It increases the risk of infection and results in a significantly shortened lifespan. On top of this, the dye often fades, leaving the fish scarred, weakened, and dull. GloFish, on the other hand, are humane and ethically superior to that. They're not injected, they're not artificially coloured, and they're not harmed at all by the genetic modification. The glow is inherent to their cells. It's permanent and it doesn't fade. The fish breed true, and their offspring can inherit the fluorescent trace. From a welfare standpoint, GloFish are a vastly better option than dyed fish. They allow home aquarists to enjoy vibrant, glowing colours without causing harm to the animals involved. Now, if you're new to the hobby and attracted to colour and movement, and let's be honest, who isn't, GloFish offer a way to start with fish that are beautiful and breed responsibly, as long as you commit to giving them the proper care. Now let's dig into the heart of this whole debate. What makes GloFish such a lightning rod in the aquarium world? And it boils down to the ethics of genetic modification. Now, to fully appreciate the ethical debate, you need to understand the context. GloFish weren't the first genetically modified animals, but they were the first genetically modified pets to hit the mainstream, and this novelty immediately led to scrutiny. The critics of GloFish will argue that genetically modifying animals for aesthetic or commercial purposes is a slippery slope, as it may normalize manipulation of life forms purely for human entertainment. They would tell you that it sets precedent for less responsible modifications and promotes impulse purchases, especially by children, due to flashy colors and some slick marketing. In fact, in some countries, such as the UK and various EU states, the sale of genetically modified animals is illegal, which reflects deeper concerns about genetic ethics and environmental safety. And there's also a concern that if GloFish were to be released into the wild, they could potentially upset ecosystems. That said, all GloFish species are tropical and would not survive more temperate climates. They have no invasive potential in most parts of the world. Nevertheless, this concern has fueled bans in several countries. Supporters of GloFish, including many within the scientific and aquarist communities, offer a different argument. They would say that these fish are bred in captivity and their modification causes no known harm to them. They have the same behaviors, lifespans, and biological functions as their non-GM counterparts. In fact, they may even be better bred, as GloFish are typically produced in regulated, controlled facilities, not mass-produced by disreputable fish farms. They will also tell you that GloFish have introduced thousands of new hobbyists to the aquarium world, particularly younger aquarists, who are inspired by the dazzling colours and curious about the science behind them. Rachel O'Leary, a highly respected aquarist and well-known speaker in the freshwater community world, has said that the problem isn't genetic modification itself. It's the mass production and poor care standards that plague the industry, and I believe she's spot on. Poor breeding, inbreeding, and stunted development are rampant among common so-called natural fish such as balloon mollies or guppies. In comparison, GloFish breeders tend to adhere to higher standards, with better water quality, stable genetics, and stronger regulatory oversight. And let's not overlook the educational value. GloFish can spark questions about genetics, bioluminescence, and molecular biology. For kids, teens, and many adults, that can be the start of a lifelong fascination with science and animal care. So where then do we draw the line? This debate often comes down to philosophy. Are we stewards of nature, obligated to preserve species exactly as they are? Or are we part of nature ourselves, with the ability to innovate responsibly? These are big questions, and there really is no single answer. But here's my take. Responsible aquarists prioritize the health, welfare, and quality of life of the fish in their care. If those needs are met, and if the fish is healthy, active, and living a full life, the fact that it glows should not disqualify it from your tank. The good news, if you put these into your aquariums, is that care of GloFish is exactly the same as their, let's say, more natural cousins. This means that a GloFish tiger barb behaves like a tiger barb. A GloFish betta eats like a betta. A GloFish tetra wants to be in a school just like its non-glowing cousin. Each species has its own particular care requirements, and the glow doesn't affect any of these aspects. There is no evidence that GloFish are more sensitive or more robust than the standard strains. What matters most is that you don't group them all under the GloFish label and assume they can live together. For example, GloFish rainbow sharks are territorial and need space. GloFish tetras are peaceful but filippy in small numbers. Always research the species, not the color. And if you do that, your GloFish will thrive just like any healthy, well-cared-for tropical freshwater fish. Now, when people have bought GloFish, sometimes they have concerns or issues that come up, and I'm going to just address one or two of these now. The first one is that some folks will turn around and say, well, my GloFish isn't really glowing. And this is quite a common question, and the answer is almost always related to the lighting of the tank. You must remember that the fluorescence is only visible under blue or UV light. Under normal white aquarium lighting, the colors may be bright, but they won't glow. And the way to Rectify this is to use a dedicated blue LED light for the evenings when you're at home and you can enjoy your tank. Install a light with something called a moonlight mode, and avoid using only yellowish or warm white lights. Make sure that you do have regular lighting for certain hours of the day. Your plants will need that, and the other fish will need it too. And remember, stress can dull coloration in fish, not the fluorescence itself, but how the fish actually displays the color. Another problem folk have is that they will say GloFish are hiding, they're lethargic, or skittish. Well, this would be the same for any fish, and it usually comes down to stress, which can be caused by poor water quality, wrong temperature or pH, an inadequate social group size. Certain species such as tetras and barbs and danios need schools to thrive. There could be overbearing tank mates or simply not enough hiding spaces. And the way to get around that is test your water. Make sure that the care of your fish is correct. Rework the tank layout to include cover like driftwood plants. Evaluate your temperature range and adjust if needed. Another concern people raise is aggression and fin lipping. And again, this is not unique to GloFish. It arises when schooling fish are kept in groups that are too small, or territorial species are forced into tight spaces, or certain mismatched species are combined. You want to keep at least 6 barbs or danios or tetras to reduce the aggression, and avoid housing rainbow sharks with other bottom dwellers. It's always a good idea to use a quarantine tank for new additions, so you can monitor their behavior and health. Now, let's get on to something that is unique here to GloFish. Can you breed GloFish, and is it legal to do so? The short answer is yes, you can, but you can't sell them. GloFish species can breed just like their wild-type versions. However, GloFish are patented. That means that you cannot legally breed and sell them unless licensed by the patent holder. You can breed them unintentionally in your home tank and keep the offspring for yourself. And you cannot sell, trade, or give away GloFish fry or eggs even to friends. Now, in some countries, this is enforced more strictly than in others. But ethically, it's important to respect intellectual property and biosecurity law. So it's always a good idea to check in your country where you happen to be listening to this podcast, where you happen to be having your aquarium. Make sure that you've checked, are you able to sell GloFish fry? Are you able to pass these on? So let's ask ourselves, are GloFish right for us? They might be perfect if you're a beginner looking for something colourful and engaging. Or if you have children in your family who are excited by the glow and for whom these fish are a gateway into becoming lifelong hobbyists. It may be that you're an aquarist who wants an eye-catching display without all the complexities of a planted or a biotope tank, and they may interest you if you enjoy the science of genetics and biotechnology. Where they are less ideal is for people who are biotope purists, who focus on recreating natural environments, or breeders who focus on wild-type conservation, or to have particular quality strains bred. It also might not be good for aquarists who dislike artificial color morphs or hybrids. So here's the bottom line. A GloFish is a fish like any other. It deserves care, stability, and a well-maintained habitat. If you can provide that, it will reward you with activity, color, and hours of fascination. And for those who see GloFish as a way to spark interest in aquariums or inspire a new generation of aquarists, I would say that's a beautiful thing. So folks, that brings us to the end of this investigation into GloFish. And whether you see them as a gateway fish, a novelty, or just another option in your fish keeping palette, I hope that this episode has given you the tools to think critically and care effectively for them. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on your podcast app, or liking and subscribing, and possibly leaving a comment if you happen to be listening to this on the YouTube channel. Now folks, if you've ever battled with new tank syndrome or ammonia spikes, or have struggled to understand the chemistry of your aquarium, please make sure that you tune into next week's episode, when I will be digging into the nitrogen cycle, trying to demystify all that is happening in something that we all think we know so well, but perhaps we're just missing one little piece that would help us be more effective in maintaining a healthy and dynamic underwater world. So until next time, keep learning, keep discovering, and keep enjoying this amazing hobby. Bye for now.
That's it for this episode of the Aquarist Edge. Please consider subscribing to this podcast so that you don't miss further episodes. We would love it if you would also rate and review the podcast, as this helps make it visible to others. Until next time, keep learning and discovering, and keep finding your Aquarist Edge in this captivating and fascinating hobby.